Hey guys, I'm going to be going over your warm-up for Monday today. And if you pull up your math warm-up for Monday, you'll see that it's asking you to determine what is the volume of this figure. Now, I did my best to redraw it on my whiteboard. I'm not always the best artist. But I did my best. But when you are hearing volume or finding volume, and you really have to think back, that was one of our earlier units that we covered in math. But when we're talking about volume, we're talking about the space that fills up a figure. And with volume, to find, that total space, we have to multiply three dimensions. Those dimensions are length times width times height. And because we are multiplying three dimensions to find volume, when we are labeling our answers with the correct units, it's always in units cubed. And units cubed has that little 3 right there. That's an exponent 3 because of those three dimensions. Length is left to right, width is back to front, and height is up and down, top to bottom. But you'll notice with this figure that it looks like there's more than one dimension. And you might remember that when you have a figure like this, it's kind of like they combined two solids to make one. So to find the volume of this figure, you have to cut it into or divide it into two figures that you can multiply the length times width times height. All right, so when I'm looking at this figure, there's two ways that we could divide it. You could either divide it right here into, and sometimes I have to kind of cover it up, this figure right here, rectangular solid, and this rectangular prism right here. Or some people might look at this figure and say that they want to divide it this way into a top layer and a bottom layer. Now I personally, for this one, I'm going to divide it right here. And sometimes it's helpful for me to kind of cover up the other part of the figure, so that way I'm just looking at the section that I'm finding the volume of. Now if I go back to my volume formula, I see that to find volume I have to multiply the length times width times height. So for this portion of my figure, my length, I actually have to look at the top of my figure. The length is 2, because if you think about rectangles, opposite sides are equal. So if this length is 2, this length is 2, that also means this bottom length is also 2. So my length is 2. Next I need to find my width, which is the back to front measurement, and I can see that that is 3 times my height, which is also 2. I'm not doing my best writing upside down today, but that is okay. So I have 2 times 3 times 2, and I know that 2 times 3 is 6, and then 6 times 2 is 12. So my volume of this first portion of my solid figure, if I cover it up, it's a rectangular prism, is 12 units cubed, okay? Because remember, volume, when we're labeling the units, it has to be units cubed, since we're multiplying those three dimensions. All right, next, I have to find the volume of this side of my figure. So I can see that the length, and I always say left to right, but remember, opposite sides of a rectangle are equal. So if this is my length right here, well, the direct opposite side should be the same length, and the direct opposite side, and I see that that is 6. My width, if my width right over here was 3, that bottom width of this whole solid figure would have to be the same. So again, this is where it's really important to know properties of these different polygons, which we're actually we've been learning about since last week. So my width would be 3, and then we can see that the height right here is also 3. We can also see how those opposite sides are equal, because right here, if this width is 3 and it goes all the way across, and then you were to go directly up, this is an opposite side also, and it still has that width of 3. All right, as you're at home, I want you to solve the volume of this second part of our solid figure by multiplying 6 times 3 times 3. But once you get your answer, we're not done with finding the volume yet. Because when you have a figure that you have to divide into 2 separate rectangular prisms to find the volume of, to find your total volume, there's one more step that you have to take, and that is to add the 2 volumes of your 2 rectangular prisms that you have. So we're going to have 2 plus, 12 plus whatever you discover is the volume of this part of our rectangular prism. And then you need to make sure whatever your answer is, that you label it as units cubed. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or leave a comment. Bye, guys.